it was just inevitable that this happened. And if you want to know why are these viruses mutating so much, it's just it's part of their inherent properties that viruses do this, especially ones that are called RNA viruses, that it's part of the engine that drives the synthesis and making more copies of the viral RNA, that is prone to making mistakes. It introduces mutations. So when the virus got transmitted into humans, it starts adapting to the new host, which is humans. And a lot of these mutations that everybody's focused in on are in the spike protein, particularly in a region that's called a RBD, which is the receptor binding domain. And there's two things about this domain that are of interest. One is that this is the domain that interacts with a part of the cell on the surface that's called the East2 receptor. This is what the virus is grabbing hold of in order to get into cells in our nose and our upper respiratory tract and then down into our lungs. These mutations, so the concern is that the virus is mutating, and we're hearing this information, for example, with the UK variant that's called the UK variant. All that means is that that was the first location on the planet where somebody sequenced it and identified the string of mutations. We don't know if it first arose there. It could have been the United States. It could have been in China. It could have been in Australia. We don't know that. So when you hear these names, please know that we don't know where it first arose. We just know that's the first place where somebody sequenced it and identified those mutations that arise in the spike protein. So there's two ways as to why the virus is adapting, collecting these particular mutations. What you're hearing is that the virus is doing that because it wants to spread more efficiently. Viruses can be very smart and very clever. If this virus was really smart and really clever, it wouldn't cause disease, because there's no advantage for the virus to harm its host, right? What does the virus want to do? It just wants to exist in nature. It has one purpose in life: make more copies of itself. That's all it wants to do. It doesn't actually want to harm the host. It doesn't make any of us feel any better during the pandemic, but it doesn't want to harm humans. It just turns out that one of the off targets of its replication is that it's causing disease and causing pathology, but it doesn't necessarily want to do that. So apparently this UK variant does turn out to be it's probably at least it's not been all figured out. What I think is likely happening is that it's binding more efficiently to the receptor binding domain, and the spike protein is binding more efficiently, more tightly to the East2 receptor, which means that if it's being transmitted from one person to another, it's probably making it more efficiently able to grab onto cells in another person infected. These same mutations, though, curiously enough, are also mutations that arise when you see a neutralized when the virus evolves to be resistant to antibodies, so it can't be neutralized by antibodies. People have figured out, other scientists have figured out, you see these same mutations, and more likely than not, the reason why we're seeing these mutations is not because the virus is trying to be more readily transmitted from one person to another, but it's trying to resist these antibodies that are trying to prevent it from just infecting the cell. And it just turns out, fortuitously enough, that these same mutations are allowing the virus to grab a hold of that ACE2 protein and be able to enter into the cell. So there's still a lot of this that's being figured out right now in real time.